Welcome back to the deep dive. Okay, so today we're tackling something pretty different. It's challenging, definitely unconventional. We've got excerpts from a work called Morning Glory Milking Farm, a Bell Lament. And just to be clear up front, this isn't, a news piece. We're not commenting on politics here. Our mission is really to look at this as a piece of literature, maybe a very disturbing one, but focusing on its, let's say, rhetorical strategy, the imagery.
Exactly. That framing is, I think, absolutely crucial. We're not here for the shock value itself, but to understand how it functions literarily. I mean, the title alone gives you a clue, right?
Right.
Morning Glory, that sort of delicate image mashed up with Bell Lament. It screams conflict. So yeah, we're diving into how the author uses this really visceral language, these kind of mythological echoes, to build a story purely around conflict and, well, degradation.
Right. And that's established immediately. The core theme isn't love. It's not even passion in a positive sense. It seems to be built entirely on mutual disgust, violence, ruin.
The whole atmosphere is just steeped in darkness. Filth, spiritual destruction, these themes dominate. And what's interesting, or maybe disturbing, is the dynamic. Both people involved seem equally repulsed, equally damaged by it all. It feels like this closed, toxic loop.
Okay, let's unpack this, maybe starting with the setting. The geography the author creates right at the beginning.
Yeah, the first verse. The environment isn't just a backdrop. It's like a moral state. Midnight mire, where shadows choke and hearts conspire. It's immediately hostile. It suggests this whole thing can only happen somewhere already deeply corrupted.
And the relationship itself is defined by, well, entrapment, isn't it? Not affection. The other person's called a tar-soaked trap, eyes like pits. That imagery of sinking, it's powerful, being pulled down into a wretched lap.
Absolutely. It's a downward spiral from the get-go. Like, you're literally drowning in shared filth. And look at the words the author chooses. They suggest permanence, damage. The speaker says he's stuck in the filth of your soul's cold wheat, and the other person clawed my chest, your nails like knives, carving my name in your twisted lives. It's not just a scratch. It's like being branded. The damage is meant to be total, defining.
It sounds mutual, that damage. But then there's that line you mentioned, the really blunt one. This ain't no love. It's a slaughterhouse floor where blood and slime seep under the door. If the damage is mutual, why that specific, almost clinical metaphor, the slaughterhouse?
I think that's the cornerstone of the text's argument, really. By stating so clearly what it is, it's not love, it's not intimacy, the author gives himself permission, essentially. Permission to use the most extreme, grotesque language possible. The slaughterhouse metaphor sets the stage. It tells you the purpose here isn't connection, it's destruction, waste, death. It prepares you for what follows.
That makes sense. It's like a thematic bridge, defining the space so the author can then fill it with, well, with the language of degradation and body horror in the next part.
Exactly. And we see the speaker take on this strange role. He's the aggressor, the driver, the punisher, but it's framed sometimes as this warped kind of purification. He uses tools like explicitly, I'll tear you up with my bull bell.
The bull bell, that's interesting too. It sounds heavy, industrial, maybe agricultural, raw animal force, not a precise weapon, but something primal, blunt, for dominating.
Precisely. And there's this veneer of, well, a corrupted moral purpose. He claims he's doing it to rob good men of this slime grind, saving them from this vile bind. But the method of saving involves this profound repulsion.
And that repulsion is directed squarely at the other person. They're reduced, completely dehumanized, called oozing slop, ugly fools, sick checks, driven by insatiable greed. It's not just name-calling. It feels like reducing a person to actual waste.
Yes, and the description of the physical act itself, that's the core of the shock strategy. It's deliberately anti-erotic. It reads more like, I don't know, waste management. He says things like, my spuds slap, and describes the other person who slurps me in like a whirlpool sump, and then coating my trunk with an awful lump. It's all mechanical, wet, sticky, focused on creating this unmanageable waste.
We should probably pause here. I mean, the language is incredibly vulgar. The task for us, analytically, is separating that vulgarity from its function. Why waste imagery specifically, not just clinical or mechanical?
Well, I think the goal is psychological destruction, not just physical. A clinical description might let you feel detached, but words like slurp, lump, sump, this language of filth, it forces you, the reader, and the speaker within the text to feel the contamination. It reinforces that the speaker isn't just acting, he's being consumed, coated in that awful lump. The degradation has to feel visceral, shared.
Which leads us right into the chorus. This seems like the anchor point, where the violence and revulsion get boiled down into those really shocking lines.
Yes, this is the peak, rhetorically. Phrases like, mashed potato, hard to play, all the slop just runs away. It sounds almost nonsensical, but deeply repellent. And then the most infamous lines, I drive it hard, it goes right through, her desperate cries, I smell her poo.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
Analytically, I mean. The maybe paradoxical genius there
Yeah.
is grounding this intense psychological battle in the most base physical disgust. The outward act is violent, dominant, but the internal state reported right after is emptiness.
Exactly that paradox. Despite the aggression, the dominance he described, he immediately says he feels soul-robbed and his mind is numb. So his profound emptiness, spiritually and mentally. The degradation clearly cuts both ways, even if one person seems to be winning the physical encounter.
So if that section was about the action, the next seems to dive into the why. The internal conflict driving this awful, repeating cycle. The pre-chorus sums it up, doesn't it? You pull me in, you drag me down, a king of filth in your broken crown. That's the trap, followed immediately by his response, pounding you into dust.
It's the cycle laid bare. Victim, then avenger, then victim again, an obsessive loop. He feels trapped, victimized, and his response is to destroy the source of the trap. But doing that just confirms his own role as this king of filth. The crown is broken because the kingdom is just ruin, shared ruin.
And then verse 3 pushes that internal conflict outwards. It forces the listener, and maybe the speaker himself, to confront the meaninglessness, or rather the nature of it all, through these explicit rhetorical questions. These really feel like the heart of the lament. They just tear down any normal way of thinking about intimacy or conflict.
Absolutely. The text just refuses to allow for easy answers. It asks, point blank, was it passion or a massacre? Then immediately, was it romance or a blood sacrifice? It forces you to consider that this encounter, whatever its surface appearance, is being defined internally as extreme sacrificial violence. The author is demanding you judge it on those terms.
And that last question.
Wow.
It reduces everything to just, well, extermination. Was it love or a hateful stamping of a bug? And yeah, the bug-clucking burst. That feels like the final admission of the true dark intent. How does that square with him feeling soul-robbed earlier, if it's just bug stamping?
I think the bug image is key. Bugs often represent infestation, something non-human that you eradicate without a second thought. Disgusting, maybe, but necessary. By framing it that way, especially the violent burst, he's trying to justify his actions as cleanup, a necessary, if hateful, task. The soul-robbing then becomes the psychological cost of being the exterminator. The price you pay for doing such a hateful thing, even if you tell yourself it's justified.
So he frames his own violence as basically payback, retribution. You built this pit, you dug this grave, and called it love to make me your slave. He casts himself as the cleanser, even if the cleaning process itself is utterly filthy.
Right, he adopts this persona. My heart's a furnace, my soul's a blade cutting through the mess you made. It's self-purification through violence directed outward. But, and this is the crucial point leading into the end, can you actually achieve purification when your tools, your methods, are so steeped in that same mess?
That desire for meaning, maybe?
Yeah.
To lift this grim struggle out of the muck.
Yeah.
That seems to lead into the final section where it suddenly gets, well, mythological. The author tries to give this whole sordid mess an epic, almost ancient weight.
It's a very deliberate shift, yeah. The speaker isn't just some guy with a, crude implement anymore. He becomes the Minotaur. I roar, I reign, a colossus standing through pain. That's the function of using an archetype like that to make the intensely personal feel universal, almost fated.
But if he's the Minotaur, isn't that creature all about beastly rage, being trapped in a maze, destructive power? He's defining himself by the very darkness he claims to be fighting. He becomes the monster in the labyrinth.
Precisely. And if he's the Minotaur, then the other person has to be elevated or perhaps degraded in kind. She becomes the goon queen, quivers in her cowpat throne, which is, I suppose, the ultimate blending of the text's themes. Royalty, power, but ruling over literal waste. The filth theme reaches its grotesque peak.
Yet even after claiming this mythic status, this victory, there's a huge cost. This must be the lament part of the title, right? He admits he's lost something vital.
Yes. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the final punchline is that the victory was hollow. Self-destructive even. He might have won the physical confrontation, but the contamination, the psychological cost was total. His fire, he says, has been tamed. His masculine core has been, by your filth, reclaimed.
So defeating the Goon Queen meant becoming so immersed in her filth that it fundamentally changed and diminished him.
That seems to be the tragic realization. He traded his own essence, his core, for the title King of Filth. It's the definition of a Pyrrhic victory. He's left drained, tainted by the very thing he sought to destroy.
And the text doesn't even give him a clean exit. It ends with that image of the defeated queen.
Right, the final image makes sure the defeat isn't tidy. The goon queen is still there on her throne, farting and pulsing her sledge-choked moan. She's ruined, yes, but she's still powerfully present. A kind of monument to the degradation that has now permanently infected the victor, too. It lingers.
So what does this all mean? Taking a step back from this deep dive into Morning Glory Milking Farm, it seems like a text using extreme repulsion, almost weaponized disgust.
And mythological scale.
Right, and mythological scale, to explore a conflict based purely on mutual hate, power, and this really toxic search for relief through destruction.
I think it shows a very sophisticated, though disturbing, use of repulsion as a narrative tool. The language, the filth, the slime, the slaughter, it's not just there to shock you randomly. It's deployed very specifically to convey a complete spiritual and emotional collapse. The experience of being soul-robbed when intimacy fails and turns into this destructive obsession.
It really forces you, the listener, to ask a pretty difficult question about human despair, doesn't it?
Yeah.
What does it signify about someone's internal state, that feeling of being empty, ruined, violated, when the only language they can find for it is the language of, well, filth and slaughter?
It suggests that when internal pain reaches such an extreme, such a state of degradation, the external reality conjured to express it has to become equally grotesque. The text seems to argue in its own way that the inner experience of total ruin demands these shocking physical metaphors just to be articulated at all. The disgust becomes a kind of necessary, tragic voice for unbearable pain.